delicious. Your thoughts on the Vikings? Are the Vikings going to the Super Bowl? Are the Vikings going to go undefeated? Is Sam Darnold turning into a pumpkin? What's going on? What's going on with the Vikings? Your thoughts, my thoughts, they're always going to be here. So, what's going on with these Vikings? What's going on? They're going to go undefeated, 17-0? What are they going to do against Detroit after the bye week? Drop a thought. Let me know what's going on. Yesterday, Sam Darnold, worst QB rating of this year by far. He was rated half of what he's done in previous games of the season. So it's a bit concerning to a lot of us Vikings fans. The defense won the game. So if the whole defense wins championships thing turns out to be true, we're lucky. But it may be that we have some struggles at QB. Now, Nick Mullins came in yesterday. Nick Mullins came in and threw one excellent pass. So that's promising because I think one of the biggest weaknesses of the Vikings right now is that depth at quarterback. They don't have J.J. McCarthy. So what we got right now is we have Sam Darnold, and then when Sam Darnold, if he gets hurt, I know he's 6'5", 500 pounds, but if he gets hurt, we've got Nick Mullins, and that's it. So Mullins coming in yesterday, throwing that one good ball was a good thing, was a positive development. So your thoughts, let me know something. Looks like the Commanders are going to be some of the top teams. It's crazy because some of the top teams in the NFL right now are the teams they said were in rebuilding mode. And the teams they said that were going to come in firing this year are in serious trouble because they're so far, they're like balls deep into the cap. They have so much money. Like Deshaun Watson is a complete bust. We obviously know his off the field stuff is going on. And then Deshaun Watson is a complete pumpkin, and they've paid him $1 gajillion, and now the Browns are screwed for the next, 4 or 5 years. So how you spend your money these days seems to be really important, and the Vikings did a lot of good things about how they spent their money, and I think that's one of the key pieces here. Point differential. The Vikings, I think, are crushing in point differential. I'm going to take a look at it right now. If you look at the NFC North, which is the best division in football at the moment, the Vikings obviously 5-0. They've got 139 points for, 76 points against. That looks, I'm not doing the math well in my head. That looks like a 63 point plus in the plus. and that's intense. There are some winning teams this year who actually have a negative point differential, so that's a factor. How many points do you prevent versus how many points do you score? And if you look at the Vikings this year, the Vikings have not been always the most efficient on offense. And the fact that the defense is able to compensate for that by pressuring and confusing the opposing quarterback, that's the Vikings' strength. The Vikings' strength is in clutch early. How clutch are you early in a game? So a lot of the pundits are talking about the Vikings. You know, they had a great first half, and then in the second half they stunk it up. You know, they laid up. But the fact is that that's clutch early. You don't want to be a Kirk Cousins and come in clutch late. That's the worst place to be. You want to be playing from ahead. And if we're talking about playing from ahead, the Vikings have been playing from ahead for the entire season, minus 3 minutes. Well, if you just join me, drop a comment. I'm sorry if the video is not super high quality. It's probably because of my Wi-Fi connection. Drop a comment. Let me know something. You know, put something on there. So Vikings 5-0. Your thoughts? Are they going to the Super Bowl? Have you put money on the Vikings going to the Super Bowl? That's risky, but you know it kind of looks like they may be headed in that direction. And I am in my 40s, and I have never seen the Vikings like this. First of all, I've seen them go 5-0, but I have not seen them like this. So 2016, they went 5-0, and they ended up, I think, 8-8 that season. Wasn't a great season. This is not the same Vikings team. It's not the same Vikings defense. It's not the same Vikings offense. Now, we seemingly have a well-rounded team. So what direction is this well-rounded team going to go? After the bye week, it's a huge challenge because you're going to be playing a Detroit team that's not cold. The Vikings historically have done very poorly after bye weeks, in my experience. I'm not looking at any stats right now, but I have seen the Vikings stink it up after bye weeks numerous times. So your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to happen in the Detroit game? Give me a prediction. Drop a comment. It's all about conversation. Glad to see that there's some folks hanging out in the live. If you're usually here for my woodworking live, I apologize, but you know it's Vikings' football season, so occasionally I drop some football content, and that's what this is. I think we're working right now on a reaction video to that Jets game. Every time the Vikings play, I know we got a chance of everything collapsing. I mean, that's just the reality of being a football fan, but especially a Vikings fan, because we have had the most bizarre and inexplainable collapses. So of all teams in the history of the NFL, the Vikings are the most cursed team, it seems like. So we always have these suspicions about if the media doesn't like us, oh my gosh, that's good, because when the media doesn't like us, we do well. And when the media likes us, we don't do well. So a lot of fans on all the Vikings content that you're finding online, they're saying, whoa, I just want the media, they're just talking about how bad the Jets are. And they're not talking about how great the Vikings are. Yeah, because honestly, the Vikings play speaks for itself. They don't need people to speak up for them. They're 5-0. That speaks for itself. So, like, I don't worry about Mike Florio or whomever. Today I was watching Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd said, "Oh, I'm sorry to the Vikings fans. We're talking about how about the don't apologize to the Vikings fans. We'll be fine. We don't need any media concessions. We don't need any of the pundits and what's his name? The purple for the win guy calls them media haircut jabronis. We don't need media haircuts to tell us that we're going to be okay. That's the difference in the past and now. So what has happened in the past does not dictate what happens now. There's absolutely no relationship to any of those former teams. You can throw all your superstitions out the window, or pretend to, like I do. But like yesterday, I watched that Jets game with the same shirt that I wore during the Minneapolis Miracle. So I'm superstitious with a capital S on super. And but at the end of the day, that's all nonsense. It's not it's not a thing to worry about. What you need to worry about are the X's and O's. wins and losses in the stat sheet. If the stat sheet is good, or if you can maintain wins and the stat sheet is not great, you're still headed in the right direction. So, your thoughts, let me know what your thoughts are so we can chat about this stuff. I'll be here. Yesterday, 179 yards. I keep wanting to call him Sam Bradford because we had another Sam in the last few years, and I'm old. Sam Darnold yesterday. I don't know the number for number, but it is 179 yards, 0 TDs, and an interception for a rating of 50. That's a very poor passing rating. Rodgers yesterday, he had 3 INTs. I think he may have had a few more yards, but 3 INTs, and his rating came out 54.9. So yesterday, actually, as bad as Aaron Rodgers' game was, his QB rating was higher in the game than it was for Sam Darnold. So Sam Darnold's definite worst game of the year, and it still ended up a W. So if you have comments on that, you have thoughts on that, it's definitely a complete D, especially as a Vikings fan, because every game the media and other people have looked for us to lose. And it seems like they're losing. There's a lot of people losing money betting against the Vikings. There's a lot of money lost, including by the bookies in Vegas, because they started the season by basically ensuring the Vikings were not going to be a competitive team. And yesterday, they're 2.5-point favorites. They blew that spread out of the water. They covered that spread easy, even in a game that most people said, oh, well, the Jets came back. Well, no, they didn't. They never led in the game, as far as I can recall, and that means that the Vikings have not played from behind other than 3 minutes in the Giants game. Let's talk about the Giants for a second. The Giants aren't as bad a team as they thought they were in the first game against the Vikings. Everybody in New York is freaking out because the Giants lost to who? The Vikings. Oh my gosh, you can't lose to them. But then it turns out the Vikings are a dominant team. And that's not New York's fault. They are an NFL team. But New York found themselves in their first game against maybe the best team in the NFL in maybe the last several years. Not the best team in the NFL like right now. I think maybe this Vikings team potentially is the best NFL team in the last decade. And I hate to say that because we've had some look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls. And honestly, the Chiefs look like trash. The Chiefs are definitely, of the Vikings and the Chiefs, the only 2 undefeated teams. The Chiefs are the ones that are the most worried because they're barely escaping the games. And the Vikings have, we can say the game tightens up towards the end. So if we looked at second half stats for the Vikings, the second half stats are going to be really bad, like a different game. But that's the thing about being clutch early in a game and jumping out to a lead, then you dictate the game flow. If you dictate the game flow, it's going to look like the other team is coming back because you're trying to drop into soft coverage like zone, and you're not sending as many people. Kevin O'Connell is doing this thing brilliantly. It's done brilliantly, and I know Flores is calling the D. But as far as Flores, once they jump ahead to a lead, Flores drops he doesn't play as tight. And, it's similar to like what Donatel was doing, and I know we all hate that, but he's preventing his deep backs and defensive staff from getting injured. Part of letting the other team in a little bit is that you don't have to smash every player you're winning. Why risk an injury when you're up 20 points? And there's 2 ways of avoiding injuries when you're up in a game. One of them is to send in your backups, and the other one is to not play as aggressively. So aggressive play is great, but what the Vikings seem to be doing is getting that aggressive play done in the beginning of the game so that they can actually relax a little bit. Your thoughts on that? The Vikings getting up early in these games and then, seemingly melting away a little bit. As I explained to someone else, I said, that's a tactic. We're avoiding injury in the secondary and in the linebacking core, so forth, by playing a softer defense when we're up. bring a offense. Somebody might say I'm wrong about that. I think I'm just going based on observation. They've allowed points, but they haven't broken, and they haven't allowed the big stuff that's going to drop them. And so, yeah, and maybe we take a loss. I don't know. I think the team is potentially an undefeated team. So let me take a sip of my Green Bay Packers tears. Delicious. Commanders crushing it. Jaden Daniels looking like he's played for 10 years. The league is not, this NFL chat, I did this for a reason. The league is crazy right now. Everything is not as it seems. All the teams that were being doubted in the beginning are now emerging as top teams. The Vegas lines are getting blown out of the water. I mean, I think in that first week or the first several weeks, there were like 10-point favorites a handful of times, and all of those 10-point favorites straight out lost. They didn't win by less than 10. They didn't not cover the spread. They lost the game. That's how off they are. So, you can't go on the judgment of the statisticians necessarily, unless we're talking about like Pro Football Focus or NFL Outsiders, because what those guys are doing is compiling stats based on their algorithms, and that's what we're hearing again. He's this and such against the rush when they're in a zone defense, whatever. Those stats that you're hearing it's taken 100 years to develop these algorithms that teach us a little more about players than, oh, he's just my guy, right? Because back in the 50s and 60s, they're collecting stats, but they didn't have the algorithms that the statisticians have now. Studying football is almost as much of a science now as the game itself, because a lot of, if you as an NFL team, if you have no statistician on your staff now, or someone that works the stats, then you're not playing Moneyball. And right now, what the Vikings are doing is playing Moneyball, dude. That's what they're doing. And people don't like it because they've spent all this money on their team, and their team is trash. And the Vikings got a $16 million quarterback, and the Vikings are 5-0. Deshaun Watson, the $100 and some million guy that the Browns picked up, who's, had his hands all over women numerous times, and I guess we still forgive that. I don't know exactly why. A certain president did the same thing too, and we forgave that, or some of us did. Some of us still thinking about it. So, your thoughts? The NFL is not the same. It's not predictable. You can't just say, well, they picked up Justin Fields and he was destroyed by Chicago, and so now he's got an opportunity playing in Pittsburgh. Well, yeah, but I actually think they're kind of right about that. I think Chicago kind of destroyed Justin Fields. And your thoughts about quarterbacks and how they're being destroyed by teams early in their career. Kevin O'Connell the other day said that it's not the quarterbacks that are failing organizations. He said it's the organizations that are failing the quarterback. It's a profound statement. It is an absolutely great observation. So I think that definitely the betting has helped the game in Europe, where a lot of the sports market is based on betting. So they're trying to emerge in Europe, obviously by the Vikings game being in London yesterday. That's another example of them. The betting does help. So like NFL Outsiders, that's a great question, Heather. NFL Outsiders is a statistician organization. They are statisticians who sell subscriptions to their site. They used to allow people to kind of get a lot of it for free. Now they've closed it off behind a paywall. So unless you are paying a subscription fee to Pro Football Focus, which I don't care for very much, I used to use NFL Outsiders to try to pick up my stats, but these statisticians are making a tremendous amount of money because not only are they sometimes hired by NFL teams, but their stats are expensive. They've developed certain algorithms and they charge the user. So if you're, say, running a live or running a YouTube channel, you're definitely gonna, and it's on the NFL, you're gonna have a subscription to Pro Football Focus or Football Outsiders generally, because you want to pull the deep stats out, and the takeaways from those stats can be important. Here's one right here that I got the other day, and that is that previous to this game, because the Jets weren't a playoff team last year, previous to this game, the Vikings are the first team in NFL history to go 3-0 to previous year's playoff teams without ever trailing. And that is a significant stat, because what they did was go 3-0 against very competitive teams, and not once did any of those teams ever lead them. So that was a stat that grabbed me, because I realized that this team is not like any other team that's been seen before. Though yesterday, they looked human. That's the thing. They had these moments where they look human, but they haven't been beaten yet. So it's yet to be seen how someone can approach the Vikings in a way that gets them down early. I fear for the Vikings if they get put down early in the game, but it's an excellent question about stats. Definitely the Vegas bookies and stuff have to have Pro Football Focus. They have to have NFL Outsiders, because without those, they can't have an edge, and they have to have an edge to be the house. So the house has to have an edge, and the edge that they have is they have deep statistics. And then I imagine that the biggest better is that the high rollers probably have access to those sites as well. So if the house has Pro Football Focus, has Football Outsiders, and access to deeper stats and more analytics, then they're going to have an edge on the average guy who's what we call a homer, like me. I'm a homer. Like, I always think the Vikings are going to win. Even when it's in a doubtful situation. Though I am in the back of my mind and subconsciously very doubtful of the Vikings often. But at the end of the day, I always feel like they're going to pull it out. And in the history of my life, I've been wrong about that many, many, many times. So what the house wants and what Vegas wants by getting subscriptions to NFL Outsiders, to Pro Football Focus, etc., what they want to do is they want to get an edge on homers, because they know people are going to put money behind their team, especially when the team is hot. And they want to find the edge, and the edge is in knowing the statistics. Yesterday, Sam Darnold looked pretty bad. If Sam Darnold has a performance like he did yesterday with a passing rating of 50, he's going to lose the game against Detroit in 2 weeks. So we have to have Sam get his confidence back. Maybe he's a little dinged up. That's why it's good that there's a bye week now, because the bye week is going to allow Sam to recover a little bit. Maybe look over his stats and with his quarterback coach, Colt McCoy, a former quarterback himself, who is now a very sought after coach, because he's doing great work with Sam Darnold. And I don't know his previous history, but Colt McCoy. I remember he used to be able to drop a dime as a quarterback. So he wasn't the great quarterback. He ended up a backup, but he was a very reliable backup. So yeah. I love that stuff. But yeah, I think statistics are an edge, and definitely I think the betting does help support them, but also their analytics are necessary for teams to win as well. The teams need their analytics. Midwest Princess trend and the popularity of Tim Waltz. Interesting. Do you think Minnesota is having a glow up? That's a great question. Maybe, I don't know. I think football is often separated from politics on an accidental level, though the NFL loves to engage in politics all the time. I don't know why. But I do think that Tim Waltz should start wearing his Viking stuff around if he's truly a Minnesotan, which I know he's not really. He's really from Nebraska. But, there's a lot of Vikings fans in Nebraska because it's not that far. My uncle, would drive from Nebraska every day back to Minnesota, or every weekend, to see my grandmother. So not a tremendously long drive, and Minnesota is typically the team that covers that Midwest area. Midwest being Minnesota, Montana, the Dakotas, Iowa, right? Not Wisconsin so much, but there are Vikings fans in Wisconsin. But to your point, to your question about Tim Waltz, I think that it's maybe possible that people realize Minnesota is a different place, a cool place where the people are chill, Minnesota nice. So there's maybe a relationship there, maybe. Welcome. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know what your Vikings thoughts are. This is a brand new thing I'm doing because I love the Vikings. I generally do restoration lives on my cabinets. So if you're here for that, we're continuing that. I'm not going to stop doing restorations. This is just something I'm doing for fun. Yeah, Minnesotans never want to. So a Minnesota Vikings fan, part of the problem is we've lost and had so much bad luck, and the other part of the problem is that Nordic people are understated and doubtful people. They're worst case scenario people. Vikings are a team where the traditional backing of them is Nordic people. That's why they're called the Vikings. And in general, Nordic people are always people who look at the worst case scenario first and work back from that. So the Vikings are like, what happens if? The Vikings fans are. What happens if? Oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? Sam Darnold is thrown like trash. We're going to lose. The media doesn't like us. Whatever it may be. Vikings fans are going to be doubtful. And they're smart fans too. I mean, comparatively with like the Steelers. The other day, this Steelers fan came on a chat and he was like, here we go, Steelers, here we go. That was the most intelligent Steelers commentary that he had was, here we go, Steelers, here we go. And that defines Steelers fans. Dallas Cowboys fans. Sorry, folks, Dallas Cowboys fans are terrible. They're not analytics people. Dallas Cowboys, Giants. Oh my gosh. The Giants, the Jets, the big market teams, it doesn't matter how bad they are. There's a dummy around every corner who will still put his jersey and his hat on, even if your team's making terrible decisions. The Vikings fans, and we almost lost our team a couple times because of how bad they were, and the owners were going to sell them. They were going to disappear until we got that new stadium. So Vikings fans kind of left. Like they were like, well, we're not going to put up with trash. And then we had a lot of trashy years. So, yeah, it's not really luck. What it is really good management. The Vikings are coached well. And now Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who is the general manager of the team and responsible for bringing in all the new personnel, works closely with Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell is a smart person as far as quarterbacks and offensive weapons. They work together to come up with a strategy on how they draft players and how they use their money. And how you use your money in the NFL right now is making a big difference. It's not how much money, because they have a salary cap. It's how you use your money. But luck is a factor. Obviously, the Vikings have had some lucky things happen. But I think it's less of a factor than the team being well-rounded. The Vikings are maybe the best well-rounded team in the NFL. A few more Packers tears today after Aaron Rodgers had his day yesterday. Thank you, Heather B, for sticking around. Appreciate that. Your comments, drop a thought, drop a comment. That's what that box is for. I don't think you need a subscription. Opinion on Aaron Rodgers. My opinion on Aaron Rodgers is that I like Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people hate Aaron Rodgers, and I don't exactly understand why. I know he did this thing with COVID. It threw a lot of people, so he's a COVID denier kind of, and that's hard to get past. He said he had been, what's it called? He had been immunized for it, but he was lying, and he showed up to a game and infected a bunch of players on his team. So we know that was a bad move. It was not a nice thing that Rodgers did. He put other people in danger. But in general, I see Aaron Rodgers as a normal man. He's about my age. I can relate to him. And Rodgers is kind of a gentleman, honestly. He doesn't. Yesterday in the game, he got a terrible sack laid onto him by Grenard. And after Grenard hit him, he grabbed Grenard by the back of the jersey. Not mean, but just to like congratulate him for just laying him out. I mean, you don't see that kind of sportsmanship from, but he's maybe the most talented quarterback in NFL history. I believe Aaron Rodgers is singly the most talented quarterback in the history of the NFL. There's never been a guy who could off his back foot throw a perfect spiral, drop it exactly in the bucket, exactly where it's supposed to go. He was even doing that yesterday at age 40. So my opinion on Aaron Rodgers is he is a pretty good sport, and he loves the game. He has been sacked hundreds of times. I'm worried about his neurological health. We saw what happened with Brett Favre, who was the guy who kind of mentored Rodgers. I think Rodgers is a very talented guy, and I think he's also kind of a meddler. So he was Flynn got rid of him at Green Bay because for two reasons. One, he's getting old and it's time for him to go. The contract was too much, they had to get out of it. And then Rodgers was meddling in the job of the general manager. It's not Rodgers' job to pick players, and he wanted to do that. He wanted to have too much influence on, even when he went to the Jets, if you watch Hard Knocks, he was involved. He changed the cadence for the team. Their whole offensive system now is based around Rodgers' philosophy. Now, this week, we're going to find out if the Jets pick up Davante Adams. If they do, I think it's a terrible decision, honestly, for the team because of the money that they're going to have to drop on Adams. And honestly, how long are you going to have Aaron Rodgers there as quarterback? Is he the quarterback of the future? He's almost 41 years old. I mean, let's look at this with not rose-colored glasses, with realism. He is a 41-year-old man who has taken a beating for 20 years, minus the 4 that he sat on the sideline. He's taken a pounding, and he is still playing, and it can't last that long. If you look at him yesterday, he was a mess. He was look, that's Rodgers as a mess. He almost won the game. That's Rodgers. Imagine Aaron Rodgers at age 28, you know. He would have won that game yesterday. No question about it. He would have caught the Vikings with 12 men on the field. He would have called a hurry up to the line, kept their staff on the field, made them jump off sides, getting free. He's the best player in history on the free play. So he causes the line to jump. They stop because they jumped off sides. They know it. They're not going to hit Aaron. Aaron throws it to the end zone, completes it for a touchdown. He's done it so many times in his career. He's brilliant as a game manager. Brilliant. And look what he was unable to do against the Vikings yesterday. Now, I'm going to throw out the game from the week before because I actually think that the Denver Broncos are a better team than they're getting credit for. And Rodgers had a really bad game. But in terms of the rest of the Jets season, I actually think the Jets are going to be fine. I don't think they should pick up Davante Adams. I think that's a bad decision financially for the team going forward. I hope Jets fans don't get behind Rodgers and his campaign to get Davante there. I had a theory that maybe Rodgers would kind of throw the game yesterday a little bit because of his desire to get Davante Adams there. What would push the ownership group to get Davante other than a loss? If they won against the Vikings, then we don't need to drop $40 million on Davante Adams, whatever insane amount of money it is. It's ridiculous. And even Davante is towards the end of his career. He's not in the beginning. This was all premeditated. Rodgers wanted Adams there from the get-go. He got Lazard, and Lazard really struggled yesterday. Lazard is not Devontae Adams. Lazard was one of the lesser talented weapons on the Green Bay team. I probably somebody, if they had enough people in here to check me on that and fact check me, then that would be great. But I don't have that many people here. But the fact is Devontae Adams is a bad pickup for the Jets. It's a foolhardy pickup, and look at all of the other financial mistakes that are being made in the NFL. The Falcons are okay right now, but Kirk is not clutch. Kirk will never win the Super Bowl. Never, ever. Kirk Cousins, they paid him, oh my God, it's highway robbery. He left the Vikings not because he wasn't good. He could have won games for the Vikings. He left because he wanted insane amounts of money. And look, now we got Sam Darnold for $16 million or whatever. And Cousins is all they can afford down there. Cousins, Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. I could list quarterbacks all day who are getting too much money, and then they can't distribute money to the rest of the team. That's the brilliance of the salary cap. It's the great equalizer. It makes all of the teams, the big and small market teams, even. You have to have smart management. And what we're looking at now with the Vikings is brilliant management. That's what it is. It's main office and the coaching staff, and then good players. Not excellent players in every position, though JJ may be the greatest receiver in the history of the NFL. He's one player. He's not going to win the game. Yesterday, you saw he was frustrated. If you watched the game yesterday, he was frustrated. And I've never seen JJ that frustrated. But he has nothing to worry about because the team around him is there to support him now. He doesn't have to carry the whole team. That's key. Because JJ's used to, well, maybe not in LSU. He had a lot of, Chase Young and Chase from the Bengals. He had weapons around him, and other players that could pick up looks. But the fact is that JJ is used to having to carry the Vikings. He doesn't have to do that anymore. So it was frustrating to him yesterday, but guess what? They won the game. They got the W at the end of the day, right? So how much does it matter? It doesn't matter that much that JJ doesn't get the number of looks that he wants. It'll happen. He's going to have a breakout where he shreds another team for hundreds of yards. It's going to happen. But we don't need Justin Jefferson to carry the entire team anymore. That's not where we are. Where we are now is a complete team with a good coaching staff and good management that's going to support this team with now the amount of money they need to support the team. We have some dead cap hit from Cousins, but that was a smart decision to get him out of there. So now we have a good distribution of money going to the whole team. I do have some fears about the Vikings in their next game, which is against maybe the next best team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. They're going to be coming off a bye. The Vikings traditionally and historically don't do well coming off a bye, but this is not the same team. My concerns are that Detroit has is similar to the Vikings. They have a well-rounded team, and they are not going to quit. It's going to be maybe the hardest game of the Vikings so far this year. And I am concerned. I believe Detroit comes to Minnesota for that game. It's going to be how rusty the team is. Hopefully we get TJ Hawkinson back, the Vikings mascot. I wish I could pull a picture of him up right now and show you. He's our tight end. He is an excellent tight end. He's one of the top 5 in the league, and he's going to be back hopefully for that Detroit game against his former team. He's already had his revenge game, so we don't need to worry about that. So when TJ Hawkinson comes back, we're going to have potentially a better shot of beating Detroit. Hopefully he will be back for that game because we need TJ back to win the tough games. This game against the Jets, if it went on another couple quarters, we're going to lose it. So it is very important that we have TJ in there because we need a tough receiver who can take, some of the weight off of Jefferson. Looks like Addison is, I don't know what's going on with his legal struggles. He's has a DUI charge, so his court date's been set for that. And we love Addison. He's a good receiver. I have my doubts about Addison, though. He's had some struggles recently. Now we got off the field stuff going on. He's getting in trouble with the law. I do have some fears. I fear that Darnold is going to get down on himself a little bit after that last game. He didn't have a great game. In fact, he had a really bad game, much worse than any game that I've seen him play. Maybe similar to his performances for the Jets. But I'm worried about Darnold. I'm worried about, I don't know if we'll have any defensive players out. I'm worried about Aaron Jones' health. Aaron Jones left yesterday with an injury. So I think some of it is about the Vikings being healthy for that game. I do not think the Vikings necessarily are going to win that one. I have a sneaking suspicion that Detroit will win the next game and we'll be 5-1. It is not the end of the world. I have concerns, big concerns about that game. Detroit is going to play from ahead. Detroit is going to jump out there, and if they get first possession, it's very likely Detroit is going to score a touchdown if we do not get to Jared Goff. Jared Goff is going to be well protected. They're going to run on the Vikings. It's going to be a challenge. They're going to be the best well-rounded team they've seen yet. Now, some people might say, oh, San Francisco. San Francisco was San Francisco was missing. I think they were missing their big tight end at the time. They were missing Christian McCaffrey. So San Francisco's power, being honest, their power was diminished in that game. But looking at San Francisco, they're not playing their best season, maybe as a result of that. Maybe some other coaches have seen film on the 49ers now, and they're starting to pick them apart. San Francisco quarterback, name is escaping me right now. Quarterback for San Francisco, he is kind of a statue. And they have a statue quarterback model for the offense. Though occasionally he does run. I honestly always thought Darnold was a better quarterback, but they made their decision and they got rid of Darnold, and that's how it works. Darnold came and took $16 million from the Vikings, and he's crushing it. We're absolutely getting our money's worth. Darnold maybe saved our franchise 5 or 6 years, because what happened is we didn't have to drop $100 million on Darnold, and he could potentially play. He's only 27 years old. A lot of people don't know this. Darnold is the same age, I believe, as Joe Burrow. He started a little later playing full time. So Darnold has a lot of good NFL years in him. Remember, Darnold is not an old man. He's just been to several teams. He's a journeyman. So now that the question is, do you pay Darnold to come back? He's on 1-year contract. Or do you develop J.J. McCarthy? So we can probably pay Darnold a little more, or potentially let Darnold go and develop J.J. And that's the tough decision in there, whether to stick with Darnold next season. But that's next season. It's time to win the Super Bowl now. It's time to win the Super Bowl, like my favorite podcast guys say, before we die, because many of us have never seen the Vikings even in the Super Bowl. You think they're going to take it all the way to the playoffs? The Vikings are, I believe they will make the playoffs this year. I think their odds now are 90% to make the playoffs with a start like that. Even if they don't win the division, which I think they will, I think that the Vikings will still make the playoffs. They would be a wild card team, and probably not the wild card team that you would want to see in the wild card round. Then again, I think that if the Vikings get the wild card spot and Washington ends up the lowest seeded division winner, then the Vikings are going to play an extremely difficult Washington Commanders team. I think the Washington Commanders maybe they're challenging the Vikings for the best team in the NFL. Jaden Daniels is doing stuff that rookie quarterbacks have never done before. That's why I say this. That's why I'm running this live right now. I don't do football talk. I'm not like a football talk guy. This is a crazy season. There's stuff going on. It's bananas. So get your pen and paper out and take notes, because what I'm talking about, I spend all day reading these stats. I got nothing else to do. Stat reading and watching film. And I do the same thing these guys are doing. So only difference is I'm just a fan, and I have no dog in the fight other than that I'm a Vikings fan. That's my number one priority is my Vikings fanhood. Like not in life, but I'm not worried about monetary gain or betting or any of those things. I just want to see my team go to the Super Bowl. There is one other team. No, there's no other 5-0 teams. There is a 4-0 team, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are 4-0 by the skin of their teeth, and they play tonight against New Orleans. If you want a hot take, I do not think that Kansas City will beat New Orleans. I believe New Orleans will win that game. Kansas City has had soft opponents the whole season, so all 4 of their wins were against softies. They weren't against teams like the Vikings or the Commanders. If Kansas City saw the Commanders, I think the Commanders would actually blow them out. Kansas City is the team of the past. They've got their 2 Super Bowls. They somehow got Xavier Worthy. I don't know how they ended up with the fastest receiver in the history of the draft. They have weapons, but there's something wrong with their team. There's something wrong with the Chiefs. It's not all there. They're a team that can kind of win in their sleep. They have clutch players, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is a game manager. So the Chiefs are gonna go to the playoffs. They're in line to do that, but they're gonna get beat. Last week, it was really close. And the week before and the week before that, it has not been KC blowing teams out like it maybe should be. So yes, to answer your question, Heather, there is a 4-0 team, but there's not a 5-0 team besides the Vikings. So after tonight, we'll know if the Vikings are the only undefeated team in the league. The Chiefs right now are undefeated as well, but they've played 1 less game. So as far as wins, the Vikings have 1 more win over them, but they're still in week 5 because they are the Monday night game, which gets a little funky, especially if you have a Monday night game and then you have a Thursday night game. So imagine, you're an NFL player and your team plays on Monday night and you take a beating. Even if you win the game, you've won the game, and you have a game on Thursday and you got to try to rest for that, and that's tricky. I don't know if that happens this year at all, but it's definitely happened in the past. Some teams, one of these teams last week, they came off of like 11 days. I think that was the Falcons. They had like a Thursday game, and then they had like a Monday night game. So they had like 11 days of rest. The Falcons need it though, because in my opinion, the Falcons are trash. They're not nothing compared to like what their record is. A lie. To be honest, you are not what your record says you are necessarily. I think the Falcons are 4-1. Watch them fall. And as soon as they start seeing some real opponents, even the Bucks, who I like, the Bucks just stunk that game up. Like, it was just they don't have any defense. You have to have a defense. You can't. It's not a shootout league anymore. That's the thing. The whole thing of the last 5 years, expected points added, which is a stat that I believe that Pro Football Focus came up with. The expected points added used to be in favor of always passing the ball. But now it's changed them last year to show that expected points added are more on average with a run. So now we're going back to a run-heavy league, right? We're going back to expected points added being better when you rush the ball, right? So teams that have a rush are going to be at an advantage from here on out, at least in the modern game. And so that makes me think also that powerful defense is a stronger component of being a winning team now. And the Vikings have that strong defense that you need to have to be a winning team. And you're seeing that also with what you call it, the Commanders' defense is making big stops. I even saw some good things about the Giants' defense yesterday, and the Giants have been highly doubted by even their fans. So definitely some real crazy stuff going on in the NFL. Expected points added being higher for runs. That's not a stat that most people know. So if you're a betting person and you're looking at a team, consider their run game as a factor on how you wager your money. because if their run game is good in this league now, it means they're going to lean on the run, it means they're going to add more points. So we're connecting. Could be a slippery slope here, but we have to sometimes take the information we have as if we're playing a poker game, right? What information do I know, right? What information is not known? Well, obviously the outcome of a game is not known, but before you start the game, all the stats that you've compiled are necessary information. A lot of people are throwing their money around right now. Gambling is insane. 40% of American savings have disappeared since the NFL started partnering with gambling companies. I'm not against gambling. All I'm saying is gamble your money smartly. Don't throw your money around at your home team. Well, unless that's when you do it. Stick to your limit. You know, if you have a limit and you say, I'm going to bet $20 on the NFL this week, bet that $20 and don't bet more than that. Stick with your limit and have a good time and enjoy the game, win or loss. If you're struggling with enjoying the games without putting money on it, then maybe you probably shouldn't watch the games. Like, it's not, if you don't have action on it, if it's not fun to you, it's probably not a great idea to watch, to do the thing. But I will say, if you are going to put your money into gambling, which is huge now, I can't even turn my Fire Stick on without seeing 5 gambling ads. So it's inundated with it. It's very simple now. So the question is, are you gonna put your money down on smart wagers? And that doesn't mean I got my Viking stuff on. I'm not talking about betting on the Vikings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to try to convince you to bet on any given team. If you make a decision to bet, then like make sure that you're going into it knowledgeably. Right now, the stats are bananas and they don't make much sense. And all of the predictions preseason by even the statisticians have proven to be wrong. So where do you go from here? The thing is crazy. It's actually an opportunity, if you use it correctly, to have some fun with it, you know, and make a few bucks. But you have to do your reading. Don't if you're, first of all, don't try to make an income out of it in general. It's not smart. But if you're trying to make a few dollars, then probably knowing the stats and looking at where is the game now. That's like the first thing you need to look at. How is the game played now? And it's not like it was, when Patrick Mahomes started even a couple years ago. Mahomes' game management, his ability to throw the ball, that was enough. That I think the NFL has been in a weak phase for a few years, and now we're seeing different talent emerge that challenges was quarterback of the Bills. He has had a lot of success. Josh Allen is not necessarily going to succeed in this league like this. He's a huge guy. He can run it. He can gun it down the field. But is Josh Allen going to succeed now that there's other teams challenging him? The Josh Allens of the world ran all over everybody for a couple of years. The Patrick Mahomes of the world ran over everybody for a couple of years, and now the game is changing. Patrick Mahomes, I honestly don't think they could see the Vikings. I think actually the Chiefs would get blown out by the Vikings worse than, some of these other teams. The Texans. The Texans would crush the Chiefs. The Texans are a good team, but the Vikings blew them out 34-7. It wasn't even a game. It never was close, not even for a second. And that's one of the better teams in the NFL. So it's all over the place. The game is crazy. It's changing. It's turning into a more defensive and rush-oriented thing. If you have kind of some savvy in watching these games, you'll notice that it's a changing of the guard. The traditional power structure of the NFL being in these kind of big market teams, and the media wants to cover big market teams. Why does the media want to cover? Media doesn't want to talk about the Vikings for more than 5 seconds because people turn off. Just like I'm talking about the Vikings, I got 4 watchers. If I was talking about the New York Giants, and potentially if I was talking about the Dallas Cowboys, I'd probably have double, triple, quadruple the number of viewers I have right now. The media wants to push the big market teams on you, and then that drives the betting market too. So people bet on the big market teams to win games that they probably are not going to win. But that's an excellent question, though. And yesterday kind of did go as I expected. I did expect the Vikings to win. I did expect the Vikings to win by more than the spread, which was 2.5. And they did. So they covered the spread as they have, I think, in every game. So, yeah, it went as expected. That's an excellent question. And it was made tough at one point. I did think that Aaron Rodgers might walk away with it there at the end of the game because I've, as a Vikings fan, I've seen Rodgers hundreds of times now. And many of those times, Rodgers won the game against us, doing exactly what he did yesterday, except for yesterday he lost. You know, and there were times where Rodgers lost to the Vikings, but generally I always felt like Rodgers had us in his, you know, he had us in his pocket, like he was going to beat us eventually. So good question, excellent question. I love this stuff. Hit me with a comment. Stick around, subscribe to the channel. Let me know you want more videos like this because we'll talk about football. You know, I'm here to talk about football. I think I almost would have to stick around in here several hours to really grab the fans and get people to kind of scan past. But yeah, are the Vikings going to go undefeated this season? Are the Vikings going to get beat? Are we going to make it to are we going to have a deep run in the playoffs? Will we get knocked out in the first round? Those are all questions. I would love to see your thoughts about those. Some of my people that I communicate with on the other Vikings, hopefully they find this this chat, this live, because I know there's a lot of thoughts going around online about what the Vikings can and can't do. And a lot of people I communicate with online and on YouTube through comments. Purple for the win. I put a lot of comments on there. Purple Daily, the Judd Zolgad, and Mackie, and what's the mustache skinny little kid's name? Whatever. They do a good job too. I think sometimes you always have to have like a skinny little kind of goofy, not goofy, but like stray man. And every single podcast has one of these guys where like, man, this guy doesn't know anything about what the history of this team is, etc. But you know, it's not fair. So yeah, Jarrett, Declan Goff on there, Purple Daily. I don't care for his opinions. Mackie and Judd have good opinions. Goff, he doesn't even know what the Twins did in the 80s, you know, so he's kind of like, sounds like he's maybe my sister's age, early 30s. So his experience with Minnesota sports is like, he lives in Minnesota, like, so obviously that helps. I've been out of Minnesota since I was a kid, but that didn't ever stop me being obsessed with Minnesota sports. So family members, and my dad is a lifelong Vikings fan. When I was little in Minnesota, I went to the Gophers games. I went to Twins games at the Metrodome. I've been in the Metrodome a number of times. I've never been to US Bank Stadium. I'm a traditional Vikings fan from back in the day. I only go to away games. I find an away game usually every couple of seasons that I can afford to go to, and usually bring my brother and we hang out. And we've been successful the last several times. Last one I went to was the Commanders and the Vikings in DC in 2022. And the Vikings came back from a 17-point deficit to win that game. So the Vikings have been in build mode for a couple years. What people have been saying we're in rebuild mode, so that it's going to be a while. But I think we've rebuilt, and now that's past tense. We have rebuilt, right? And we are a rebuilt team. I think that the rest of the season is going to it's gonna be bananas. I do think the Vikings could end up undefeated. It is possible, but I don't see them winning this Detroit game on week 7 right now as constituted. I need to know if Hawkinson is coming back. If Hawkinson is coming back, I think that possibly we can win the game against Detroit. If Hawkinson is out, maybe they edge us a little bit. So after that, I'm thinking maybe like a 14-3 type season, dropping a couple games here and there. It already looks like it's very difficult to beat the Vikings, so I see them going to the playoffs. I definitely think the Vikings are a Super Bowl contender. So I think of any year, if you look at the odds, I think the odds makers have the Vikings as 25-1, or they did a couple weeks ago. The last time I looked, it was 25-1 to win. one of my favorite comedians, Nick Swardson, always predicts the Vikings to go undefeated. But Nick Swardson, he said they would lose to Jacksonville and then lose to Chicago. He may be right about that. We might find Nick Swardson is accurate in his predictions. So yeah, you know, drop a comment on this video. I'm gonna post this up. I know there's some couple minutes of silence in there, but you know, scan through the video and see what kind of takes I had, see what you thought about those takes, and you know, we'll drop another video. I got a reaction video I want to drop from yesterday. I watched the whole game and nervous, you know, nail biting type game. And I love you all. I appreciate you all for coming. I think I'm gonna drop off here and you know, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and take care. See y'all later.